Hello everyone, Emma Power here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I'm going to be going over the top 10 TCG budget decks that you can build right now. So in the number 10 spot is a deck that really surprised me, and that's going to be Charm Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu came out in the set Battle Styles and has the attack Nature's Judgment that does 80 damage, and then you may discard all grass energy attached to Bulu and do 80 more. So can do 160, which is pretty nifty. With a choice belt, you can do 190, but the main appeal is that 2-hit KO on all V-Star Pokemon. And with the help of Charm, you can attach any number of grass energy from your hand to your Pokemon in any way you like. The deck also makes use of additional attackers in the form of Gliscopod, which does 30 damage and then 50 more for each of your opponent's V and GX in play, more important for standard than expanded. And then Farfetch'd, that has the attack Leak Slash, that does 20 damage and then 10 more for each damage counter on your opponent's active. And then Trapias, that does 30 damage, and if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your last turn, it does 90 more damage. So you can make use of these other utility Pokemon and not have to spend 3 energy on each Tapu Bulu every turn. A very simple deck to play, very easy to set up. You just have to get some luck with a bit of draw supporters, but here and there we do play some good ones. 4 copies of Research, 3 Bruno, and 3 Serena should see you well. If you can't afford Serena as it's just come out instead of Tempest, then I would recommend swapping them out for either more Bruno and Cynthia's Ambition. And as well, I guess Birdkeeper is an okay one to consider as well. But overall, a super solid list and pretty cheap to put together. So this next one is going to be God of War Gallade from the set Chilling Reign. God of War has an amazing ability, Shining Arcana, that says once in your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and attach any number of basic energy you find there to your Pokemon any way you like, and put the other cards in your hand. And then its attack does 60 damage and then 20 more, or 30 more I believe, for each psychic energy attached to God of War. So it's a very good attack because it allows you to 2-hit KO V-Stars, and then Gallade does 60 damage for each of your opponent's V in play. So against stuff like Vikavolt Regieleki, or any fighting type weak decks, or stuff like Eternatus, Gallade will be doing massive damage. Thankfully, you can set these Pokemon up very easily with a thanks to Kirlia. With the attack Mirage steps, it says search your deck for up to 3 more Kirlia and put them into play. So pretty easy deck to play, very easy to set up, and because you have to learn a bit with what you do with different God of Wars and Gallades, it is good for beginners in that regard, and that's why it's up on the list. There's also no Serena in this list because you'd never really want to discard resources, so it also is pretty cheap in that regard, and it's also not playing ScubaNet. So pretty cheap deck overall to put together, and one I'd recommend for beginners. So taking the 8th spot is going to be Spur Tomb Cincino, or Spur Tomb Ditto. Spur Tomb is a very cool attacker with the ability Curse Message, says when it's knocked out you get to search your deck for any card. Then has the attack Chain of Spirits, that does 10 damage and then 60 more for each other Spiritomb in your discard pile. So if you're just attacking with a 1 Spiritomb, you can do 190 damage, which is really solid, but you can use Ditto with the ability Sudden Transformation to copy the attack of a Spiritomb in your discard pile. So essentially what this deck wants to do is attack with 1 or 2 Spiritombs in the early game, and then move on to Ditto, and just use Chain of Spirits, I should say, rather, for around 250 damage. Now you could play, well, we do play Choice Belt, so you could play a Choice Belt on the Ditto to do 280 damage and knock out a V-Star. So how we get through the deck is that we use the Pokestop engine, which allows us to discard the top 3 cards of our deck and then retrieve any items that we discarded in this way. So that's why we play only 4 supporters for Raihan, which is acting as our way to accelerate energy as well. And then of course we have items like Cross Switcher, which will allow us a gusting effect, and then Cross Receiver, which will allow us to retrieve our only Raihans. So it's a really cool deck to play, it's a lot of fun, and it does have 1-hit KO potential. The problem is sometimes Cincino can be a bit hard to trade for new players, and the deck ultimately is pretty difficult to play. But other than that, a very solid deck. So this next one is a bit of a fan favorite, and one of the key reasons being is a lot of the deck you can actually get through a theme deck. The Charizard with Battle Sense says once in your turn you may look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose one of them, and then discard the other 2. And then Royal Blaze for 2 Pharyngy does 100 damage and then 50 more for each Leon in your discard pile. So what this deck wants to do is trying to discard a bunch of Leons from your hand or using Battle Sense to essentially thin them out and then do loads of damage with Royal Blaze. And then we have the Bibarel Draw Engine as well as Moltres as a backup attacker. Now this deck did have a lot of consistency issues, at least in my opinion, before Silver Tempest, but with Serena, if you're able to get your hands on a few copy of these, is a massive upgrade for the deck, allowing you to discard multiple Leon from your hand, as well as being able to gust up one of your opponent's Pokemon. So very strong effect in that regard, and a really cool list overall, thanks to Heat Fire G and Magma Basin, giving a bit more tank ability, as well as ways to accelerate energy. Moving on a bit, we have the Clefairy Basket Legion deck. Clefairy with the infamous ability Moonwatching Party, allowing you to search your deck for basic psych energy and attach them to each of your bench Clefairy. And then Wonderstorm does 20 damage for each energy attached to all of your Pokemon. And then we do have the alternate attacker, Hisuian Basket Legion, with the attack Upstream Spirits. It does 20 damage for each basic energy in your discard pile, and then you shuffle them in afterwards. Now, this deck can play YDRV, which only costs around 1 pack, but I decided not to include it because, some people don't like playing the Vs, and running YDR can be a bit of a liability sometimes, and it's basically lost me a lot of games. But either way, some people really like it, so YDRV is a good option for this deck. But other than that, it's a pretty easy deck to play. You just kind of have to get a bunch of Clefairies in play, make sure your Hisuian Basket Legions aren't prized throughout the whole game, and try and bench Hisuian Basculin. And then beyond that, it's pretty easy to play. You only really need one boss's orders because you're rarely gusting, so you don't really need Serena. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There's no scoop up nets because you don't need them. You can actually get away with just playing Escape Rope, Switch, and Switching Card. Plus, scoop up net would reset your energy, so it is pretty bad in that regard. Next one is going to be Lunar Rock, a bit of a fan favorite from the Pokemon Go set. So 8 out of 9 Pokemon, assuming you play Radiant Greninja, you don't have to if you can't afford it. But either way, Solar Rock and Lunar Rock from the Pokemon Go set. Solar Rock has the ability Sun Energy. It says once in your turn, you may attach Psych Energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. And then Lunatone has the attack Moonkinesis that does 30 damage, and then does 30 more damage for each Psych Energy attached to this Pokemon. So, pretty devastating move once you start to get loads of Solar Rocks in play. I should have mentioned that Solar Rock only accelerates to Lunatone. If it didn't, that would be a wee bit broken, but either way, Lunatone still can do a load of damage with 4 energy attached to it and a choice belt. So you just start getting easy 2-hit KOs, and thanks to Serena, you can try and boss around some of your opponent's more tanky Pokemon. But either way, it's a super cool list. It's very easy to play. The only thing that's truly expensive about this deck is needing the 4 scoop up net. But if you take them out the equation, it's a pretty easy deck to pick up because of how cheap it is, and it is pretty easy to play. So this next list is going to be from Dugon. Dugon's a bit of an interesting one because a lot of people theorized it would just be a better Malamar and it would actually be a very competitive deck, but it doesn't seem to be that competitive. However, I did find this list that went 6-2-0 at an online event the other week, which I thought was super cool. So I thought I'd feature this one. So essentially, if those of you who don't know what Dugon does or have forgotten, Dugon has the attack Flow Return that says shuffle any amount of water energy attached to your Pokemon into your deck, and you do 40 damage for each one. And then Definion, over here with Ocean Accompaniment, says as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a water energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon with the attack Swim Freely. So essentially, we're going to use Finion to accelerate a whole load of energies to our Dugons, and then shuffle them all back in. This way, when Dugon gets knocked out, we don't actually lose any of our water energy, and we can just do it all again by drawing into them, I guess, with Bibarel and cards like Capacious Bucket. The deck is pretty easy to play in that regard, and it's pretty easy to pick up. The only expensive cards in this deck are really going to be Scoop Up Net and Path to the Peak. You don't have to play Path to the Peak, you can just play stuff like Training Court. And then, of course, we have 1 copy of Capes of Toughness. That'll just allow you to give either Finion or Manaphy more HP against stuff like Sableye. So pretty cool deck in that regard, and yeah, I'm interested to see how this one plays out in the future, if it gets any more upgrades. So this next list is going to be the Radiant Jirachi. Radiant Jirachi, really cool budget deck, only about 1 Silver Tempest roughly, Radiant Jirachi, so very easy deck to pick up. So Radiant Jirachi has the ability Excited Wishes, says when this Pokemon is knocked out, you may search your deck for any 3 cards. And then has the attack Astral Misfortune for 2 colorless energy, so we can use 2 energy and double turbo. Says flip 2 coins, if both of them are heads, your opponent's active is knocked out. And then we use the Stadium Glimwood Tangle that says once in your turn, at the end of your turn after you've flipped any coins, you may ignore those effects and reflip them all again. So a very cool deck, and it's a very devastating one against multi-prize decks. So it's those matchups that this deck really wants to face. So stuff like Mew VMAX, Arceus Duraludon. Well, I guess not Duraludon, but big multi-prize Pokemon such as Palkia and stuff. That's what Jirachi really wants to face. And if you start factoring Crushing Hammers, you will get there in the end with a lot of these decks. You can also play Pokemon Catcher and Boss's Orders to boss around annoying attackers and large walls that would otherwise get in the way. But either way, a very cool deck, and it has been very successful actually. I'm surprised at how successful this deck has been. But either way, it's a super cool list, and I would recommend giving this one a go if you have any doubts regarding Radiant Jirachi. So this next one is going to be the infamous Sorok box. Definitely received a lot of hype leading into Silver Tempest because it does have a couple of new upgrades. One of the biggest ones being the Raichu with Ambushing Spark. Does 40 damage, and then if your opponent has used any V-Star powers during their game already, this attack does 90 more damage. So essentially allows you to does 100 more damage, sorry. So it will allow you to take a 1-hit KO on Lugia V-Star as soon as they put their Archops into play. You also have a Gliscopod for some matchups. Breakstone will allow you to do a ton of damage once you get all 3 in the discard pile. Cleavor with the attack route is a massive benefit against other one-prize decks, as well as the Regieleki Vikavolt deck. Then Appleton is another option against Lugia because Lugia is so popular right now. Then Flapple is just a very good all-round attacker. And Mightyena will allow you to get a 1-hit KO on Mew VMAX. And then last but not least is the Slowbro, that says if your opponent has exactly 2 prize cards remaining, if your opponent has exactly 1 prize card remaining, you take 2 prize cards. So it's kind of like if your opponent is playing a single prize deck and you get ahead in the prize race, you can essentially map out your board state and wait until they about to take the last prize essentially, and then use Twilight Inspiration to win the game. So a very cool deck, very powerful. Does have a couple of consistency issues, sadly, and unfortunately this deck does suffer from the Lost Zone Cramorant deck. But either way, it's a super good list, and I would definitely recommend giving this one a go. So this last one is going to be a Regigigas list. This one finished, I think, 9-2-0 or something, crackers in an online event. Regigigas definitely pushing what it means to be budget. But either way, it's a very strong archetype and easily the best single prize deck right now, at least in my opinion, if you don't include the Lost Box engines, which I think are a wee bit broken anyway. But either way, Regigigas, very powerful deck, allowing you to accelerate up to 3 special energy cards, or just 3 energy, just 3 energy literally, from your discard pile if you have all the Regis in play. So it's a super cool deck. You get to play a ton of special energy. It's a lot of fun to play, but it is pretty difficult for beginners. So it's why I don't always recommend this deck to new players, but it is still a very good one, and it's certainly one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive, single prize deck going right now. With all that said, thank you for watching. Spin Hammer Power. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know if I missed any down below. And yeah, thank you for watching.